Hey everyone, sick as a dog. I don't even know why we say that saying. How sick do dogs get? I don't know. Anyway, I'm sick. So I thought I would actually show you what the inflammatory response does when you're sick. Yeah, I got sick. What's the big deal in getting sick? People get sick all the time. But it wasn't that I got sick that was the big deal. It was how my body fixed itself. And it did. My body went to war and it fixed itself. Well, almost. I'm still a bit snotty and I cough from time to time. So, first of all, my body tried and tried for me not to get sick. It's got hairs in the nose. Everyone's got them. And they're designed to catch all sorts of things that might enter down into the lungs that shouldn't be there. It's also got a sneeze response, so that if something goes into the nose and irritates it, the body sneezes and tries to expel it. It's a little bit like a bouncer at a nightclub. And we've got our skin. Our skin is a bit like the Glad wrap that you put over food so that things don't get into your food. Well, the skin's the same. It's the Glad wrap over our body, stopping things from getting into our body. And then we've got our tears and urine and our sweat, all designed to purge all of the bugs out of our system. So with all of these systems in place to stop us from getting sick, how on earth did I still get sick? And I think it has a lot to do with the size of these pathogens, these bacteria and viruses. So we can see bacteria with a normal microscope that just uses light and it makes things bigger. But an electron microscope has to reflect electrons off and it's not really an organism because a virus isn't alive, but it reflects electrons off it so that it can see electron by electron the shape and the size of what we've got. So there are just too many of these viruses in a square millimetre for our nose hairs and our sneeze response and things like that to try and combat. And so I ended up getting sick. They multiplied in my body and I got sick. And so the bacteria and viruses have made it past our first line of defence. And this is where our second line of defence comes in. And it's really intricate and complicated. And there are still new things being learnt about it all the time. At the moment we understand a lot, but we don't understand it fully. And we don't understand the wider implications of what happens with our immune system. I get excited about how complicated and amazing the human body is. It amazes me with all the intricacies that our human body is a functioning, walking, talking bunch of cells, that we're even still here, with the amount of things that we do to our bodies, that we're still here. Every time I learnt something in nursing, it would amaze me how the human body just keeps on going. It keeps adapting and continuing on the species. It's amazing. Anyway, I digress. So once a pathogen, a bacteria or a virus, gets past our first line of defence, several things go into play. One of them is that the pathogen itself gives off what's called pyrogens. Now, pyros, the Greek word for heat, you might know the term pyrotechnics for fireworks, or pyromaniac for someone who likes to set things on fire. And the old-fashioned term pyre was a big mound that we set on fire, that we cremated people who died. These pyrogens are external pyrogens or exogenous, but we've got internal pyrogens as well. And these are triggered by inflammasomes. Did you even know we had a thing called inflammasomes? Now, inflammasomes, they're a bit like the lemmings of the human body. So if a pathogen attaches to an inflammasome, the inflammasome goes all altruistic and says, I can't continue on and let this pathogen replicate. I must kill myself. Bit like lemmings. You know, too many lemmings and they jump off the thing? Well, this is what happens with the inflammasomes. So they deliberately die. And in the process of them dying is that they burst and they spill the contents of themselves into the tissues. Now, there's lots of different things inside an inflammasome, but a couple of them are strings of proteins. And so there are two lots of proteins called interleukins. I don't know why they're called interleukins, they're just called interleukins. And so we've got interleukin 1 beta and we've got interleukin 18. And we've also got a thing called tumour necrosis factor, or TNF. And these things go into the tissues. Now, you might have guessed it, these things are pyrogens. Now, these pyrogens then trigger the hypothalamus in the brain, which looks after our regulatory system. So it keeps homeostasis happening. So we've got homeostasis trying to keep our temperature regulated at 37. We're all about 37, give or take a little bit. And it tries to keep our heart rate and our sugar levels and our breathing, all of these things at a regular level. And when the pyrogens reach the hypothalamus, it acts like an increase in the thermostat. So instead of saying the body needs to stay at 37, it will say that the body needs to stay at 38 because it's time to cook these bastards. So just a little quick side note, inflammasomes are part of the inflammatory response. And so with inflammation comes swelling. And we get it all over the body. It's a body-wide reaction when we get a virus or a bacteria into our body. You know, rather than just getting a cut on your hand that's local. So if you get sick, like getting a cold, that's body-wide, it's systemic. And that happens everywhere. The brain, the liver, the lungs, your skin, everywhere just feels like crap because of the inflammation. Now, what we used to do to reduce a fever was take aspirin, or willow bark, as it was derived from. It was synthesised and we created aspirin. Really good at reducing fevers, but it increases the amount of inflammasomes in the brain and the liver. And these are places that you do not want extra inflammation. The brain in particular, it's got nowhere to go. And so you end up with brain damage. So there's a syndrome called Ray's syndrome, R-E-Y-E, Ray's syndrome, that happens when you get too many inflammasomes in your brain and your liver. And it's usually because people have taken aspirin trying to reduce their fever. So another digression. So in addition to the inflammasomes, we've got a complementary system, and the immune system is amazing, and I'm only touching on a couple of little bits of it. So this complementary system, there are these proteins that recognise that we've got pathogens running around our body, and they go and attach to it. And then they call all their mates over and they attach to them too, and they encircle the pathogen and kill it. And then they invite the macrophages over, the phagocytes, a bit like Pac-Man, to come and eat them, and then they're gone. So that's just another extra little bit about the war. You know, it's another front of the war on us trying to fix ourselves. So it really is a war. Our immune system is acting out a coordinated attack on anything that doesn't look like it should be there. But we've got people with things like rheumatoid arthritis and lupus and gout and ankylosing spondylitis, irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's, and the list does go on, unfortunately. And that's where their immune system is targeting something that should be there. So in rheumatoid arthritis, it's attacking the joints in between all our bones. And if you think about all the components of the immune system, a deficiency in any one of these is going to trigger an autoimmune response. So I really tip my hat to anyone living with an autoimmune disorder. They're complicated to treat, and flares can occur at any time for any reason. So if you know anyone that is having a flare, if they say they're having a flare, cut them a bit of slack. In fact, cut them a lot of slack. You usually can't see the pain that comes with inflammation, but it's crippling. But what I was going through was an inflammatory reaction to a pathogen. It's what the body is supposed to do. And as you can see in the intro, I was as sick as a dog. I was hot and sweaty and cold and shivery and snotty and generally just felt like crap. I took my temperature from time to time and then wondered what was happening inside my body. Then, you know, what else do you do when you're sick? You think about making a video about being sick. So I started to take my body temperature just with a thermometer in my mouth, and for the most part it just shows that I'm running a fever. So I've done a graph, and the graph has the very bottom line at 37, so that's normal. Anything above the graph is me running a fever. So I wanted to see if I could catch the inflammatory response in action, and I did. And I was so excited while I was blowing my nose and feeling like death. I wrote all my temperatures down and the times that I took the temperatures. So this was at the very end of me having a cold, and I didn't have the flu. I would have been a darn sight sicker if I'd had the flu. And yes, I have been vaccinated, but you can still get a cold if you've been vaccinated. Anyway, so it was at the end of me having this cold, and I was thinking about what was happening inside of me. And now I know that I had low enough numbers of the virus inside of me that the pyrogens that were being either produced by the pathogens or produced by the inflammasomes weren't enough to trigger the increase in thermostat in my hypothalamus. So my hypothalamus has gone, homeostasis, let's bring the temperature back down to 37. But my core temperature was still at like 38.5. And so my body then has to go, we've got to cool down. How do we do it? We start sweating. So the beads of sweat form on your skin and they evaporate, taking the heat away. It's absolutely brilliant. So when I started to sweat, I thought, oh my God, this is it. This is the inflammatory response in action, just the other end of it. So I caught it all in action. So I've done a graph. Have a look at that. That's next. So I was pretty much taking my temperature hourly, and I was just hot and I was sick, but I wasn't sweating. And then I woke up, I don't know, about 11 o'clock, and I was sweating out of every place you can sweat from. So I took my temperature and I was still up. But then I took my temperature every 15 minutes just to see what was going on, because I actually started to feel well. And my temperature was dropping with each time that I took my temperature, to the point where I'm actually back to normal. And I actually felt really well. I felt like I was no longer sick, like I was no longer tired, but it was also 2 o'clock in the morning. So I hope you've enjoyed this little snippet into me being sick, and maybe it's answered the question as to where has Wendy gone? She hasn't done a video for a while. And I might have been as sick as a dog. So if I was a bloke, I would have been far sicker. I'll link the video down below. I might even pop it up here. Man flu, it's a real thing. Men have a higher inflammatory response to the same bugs that women have. So you can get a man and a woman who get the same bug, and the man will appear to be much sicker. It's a real thing. So cut them some slack too. And before you go, I really want you to hit the subscribe button. Now, so many of the people who are watching my videos aren't subscribed. Now, if you've got a Gmail account, a Google account, you don't have to do anything else. You can just sign in and hit the subscribe button. So you can subscribe without having to sign up again. And stay well. Thanks for watching.